The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the QATV staff or board of directors. QATV, in compliance with FCC regulations, is prohibited from exercising control over the content of independent, member-produced public access programming.
Welcome to Faces of South Asia. I'm Isha.
And I'm Sophie.
Every show we bring out a new chapter, a new story. We try to reach out to the community. And this show, we have a special guest, Mr. Tom Clancy from the Kennedy Center, and Norma Fitzgerald. And they are going to bring what does elder service do to serve the community, serve the women, and serve all of us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Please tell us something about elder services, what it does, how does it work? Is it in every county, every city?
Sure, yeah. Each community has a council on aging as dictated by the state, although they don't exactly define what that is. They leave it up to the individual community. So most are governed by a board. Some of those are an advisory board, like here in Quincy, it's an advisory board. In Quincy, I'm appointed by the mayor, so I'm a mayoral appointment, and it's a city department also. So I answer to the mayor, he's my direct boss, and then we have a great group of volunteers on our board that work as advisors to the Council on Aging.
And it works similarly in Sharon, where I retired from in September. I had been there 25 years. We have an advisory board, and we have a nonprofit group, the Friends of the Council on Aging, as many COAs, as they're called, do, to help fund some of the programs and special needs for elders. And ours was also a department within the town, and my overseeing person was the town administrator, my supervisor. So very similar, and there are 350 towns and cities, I think, in Massachusetts. So you're looking at a lot of councils,
Yes.
and some of the smaller towns, but especially out in the western part of the state, actually share. They may share staff, they may share even, I don't know if they share a board, but the pickings are pretty slim in some cases compared to what we have in other parts of the state.
Now, Quincy is a big city.
It is a big city, and it's interesting, and there's a huge senior population. So we have 20,000 seniors in the city. You know, a lot of times you'll see towns and they might have 3,000 or 4,000. You know, and to have 20, they go, whoa! But I'm like, well, we don't serve all 20. We're available for all 20,000, and there's a good portion, a significant portion of that utilize us. But you know, we're there for everyone if they need us.
And how do you can tell us, how do they know? Like, you know, Quincy, I see, is a changing dynamics. You know, how do they know that there is something like elder services, or how do the women reach out to you, or how do the community in general reach out to you?
Yeah. There's a few vehicles that we use. You know, it's an interesting question. The former chairman of our board for many, many years was a man named John Noonan, and I know some of the viewers will remember John. And he used to get so frustrated, he'd come into me and he'd say, I just met another person. And they said, what does the Council on Aging do?
Right.
You know, and in those days, we had no center. So we were operating we utilized this building, the public library, the Koch Center, the mayor, when he was Parks Director, was very good to us, and we used the Koch Center often. We used a lot of the housing facilities in the area to do our programs. So we were running around doing programs, throughout the city. Emmett Schmauser, who works for the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, who Norma and I are very familiar with, Emmett would say with the senior center, if you build it, they will come. And that's been a huge asset to the community and really a great vehicle for us to offer services to people. Many of the seniors that come in, and most that really come in are very vibrant and may not need a lot of help. But as the years have gone by, we see that maybe some of them begin to decline, and it's an opportunity for us to let them know what's available, or they get familiar with the staff and they'll come in. So that's been a huge thing for us. We have a big transportation program in the city. We have 11 vehicles on the road. We go to most of the major hospitals in Boston. We go to every medical facility here in the city. So there's a lot of visibility with our vans, and there's phone numbers on the vans. So sometimes they'll call the transportation number because that's the number that they've copied down, but they may need service in maybe health insurance questions, so we can hook them up with a Shine counselor, which is one of our programs. So those are tools that have, and we also utilize cable. Opportunities like this, I'm also on. We have a bulletin board. We put our things on the city website. Is another way that we communicate with people, and we have a newsletter. We put out 5,000 copies of a newsletter every month.
So this is all free. Like anybody, like any elder person can use this.
Yeah, every program isn't free. It's free to come and join
the elders.
The center. The
okay.
Transportation, medical transportation, is a completely free service. We may have some people that come in to the Kennedy Center that do a particular class, and then maybe a fee to cover the cost of that class.
Okay.
For instance, if they were doing flower arrangements, there may be a small fee, $3 or $5, so that we can pay the instructor.
Yeah,
so
we had similar, although we had a donation schedule relief for our medical transportation. We had, of course, fewer vehicles. We had, when I started, less than 3,000 seniors. When I left, we were moving up closer to 5,000 seniors. And of course, that's one of the issues that everybody's facing, cities and towns across the country now, was an aging population. But again, some of our services and some of our programs were free, and some of them had a fee, and some of them were a donation. But you would get to know some of the people too, and sometimes there could be a scholarship or another way to help somebody get what they need.
So pretty much it's well funded by the state, and then you have the classes which may require a minimal amount.
The state actually provides some monies. It's based on kind of the number of head count, which is done every 10 years at the census, which in a way, during this time when the population is exploding, is going to be more difficult.
Challenging, yes.
But more of the money really comes locally from the cities and towns. Or in some cases, friends groups have helped support programs. And every town is different, so some have a decent sized staff, and some of them are struggling with maybe one part-time person.
Yeah, I've really, 25 years, you should be commended for that. And this is one of the most well-respected council on aging directors in the Commonwealth, really. She's well recognized. But I think in some ways it's easier in a big city. A lot of the very small towns have a difficulty with the city government, and it's strange to me that sometimes selectmen, there'll be a proposal where they want to build a senior center. No, that's not going to happen. And I've really faced in my 18 years here is with all the mayors that I've served under, they really want to help out with the senior population. So
the transportation.
It's worked out well.
So the transportation, is it just to the hospitals or to the doctor's office or to the shopping? Like for the shopping.
Yeah.
What does it do? Like how?
We have two types. The medical transportation operates Monday through Friday, about 9 to 4. We go to any medical facility in the city. So a regular doctor's appointments,
okay.
some people may see a counselor or a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a podiatrist, a chiropractor, a dentist, anything in the medical field. That operates within the city limits. Also, most of the major hospitals in Boston daily. And then there's a couple of days that we go to the Kearney Hospital. So that's completely free service. You don't have to join or anything else. Basically, if you're a senior, you can call and just make an appointment. We ask for a 2-week notice.
Okay.
If we can take you in 2 hours, we will. It's just a matter of the availability on the vehicle. In addition to that, we have a pay service called the Trans Van, which operates more like a cab service. It doesn't go anywhere beyond the city limits,
Right.
but that will take you to anything but medical. So you could go to the beauty shop or the barber shop, or you could go to lunch, wake, or a lot of people have a spouse that may be in a nursing home
To visit.
and we'll take them to visit on
What a
that.
great resource.
It is a good service. There is a little bit of a waiting list on that, and the reason that we have that is our priority is medical. I don't want to turn anybody away who needs medical. Now, we don't do emergency medical because that's if it's an emergency, then call 911 and get the ambulance. But there is a waiting list for the Trans Van, although we try to move it, and it's prioritized. If somebody comes on, they're well into their 90s, and they're really stuck, and they need they would get bumped to the top of the list.
So for grocery shopping and stuff?
Correct. Yeah.
So your medical vans don't do any grocery shopping. It's more of this.
No.
The other
And
stuff.
are they multi-person vehicles or are they cars?
No, they're multi-person vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they also bring people into the center?
They do.
Center?
Yes. Yeah.
So one of the is very similar again in Sharon and a lot of other towns where there may be one or two buses or mini buses. We had two, and we had a small van. The van was mostly used for medicals, and then we had a couple of old retired town cars. I know tonight actually they're trying to get a brand new one because it breaks down all the time. And the volunteers actually, we had volunteers in the property tax work-off program who drove the cars and took people to medical appointments. The hardest thing out in the suburbs is taking people into Boston hospitals.
Yeah.
Because a lot of volunteers are senior citizens and don't want to drive into the city.
Right.
So in some cases, people are eligible to use the ride, which is part of the MBTA, a paratransit vehicle. But you have to have certain limitations to be eligible. And so it differs a bit. Being in the city certainly is, I think, easier in terms of transportation.
I think it's a lot easier because you get funding, you have a lot to do, yes, and it's harder in the suburbs, as I hear.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what other classes do you have at Elder Services
Well,
provide?
I looked closely at the New England Centenarian study, which was done by Harvard University a number of years back, and they looked at longevity. And they said certain people live to be 100. Now, the common thinking is, well, they have good genes. My own grandmother lived to be 99, and I thought, well, those are the genes I want, because no one else did that well in the family. The study looks at it, and it says that really 30% of longevity is attributed to genes. So that means 70% are other factors. Some of those factors are very obvious. They don't smoke, good nutrition, exercise. But there were other things like attitude, having social networks, having a reason to get up, something to do, volunteerism. So there were all these things. So when we looked at designing the Kennedy Center, we thought, well, we want to make sure that we have kind of programs that are going to stimulate a wide variety of folks. And maybe we'll have people exercise and merely not know that they're exercising, and then there'll be others that come down to work out, and they know that's what they want. So what I mean by that is we have line dancing. Well, line dancing is great exercise, but you don't feel like you're exercising.
That's true.
You know, you think yourself
And
as
Zumba,
dancing.
kind of along the same lines.
Right,
That's true.
right,
That's
yeah.
right.
So we have Zumba, we have line dancing, we have strength training, which is core exercise, and we have exercise equipment that people can use, free weights and things like that. We have computer classes to keep the mind sharp. We have a cafe there for socialization. You know,
Tai
people
Chi.
can come in. We do Tai Chi,
Which
yeah.
supports the balance. I mean, you have yoga too.
We
I
have
think,
yoga,
right?
yeah,
I
we
mean,
do.
all of these things which
We
help
do.
with blood pressure, balance, strengthening,
Right.
osteoporosis.
So this is on a weekly basis. You have a timetable that it offers these various classes?
Yes, yeah. So there's in the newsletter, it's really spelled out on the calendar. There's certain days that are like today, Thursday was a big thing. We had exercise class in there. We had a sing-along class. The cafe is always open. We had a computer class. There's probably 100 people in there today at least.
So
know.
do they go, like your transportation, do they go and pick up all these people and bring them to
No,
the...
most of the ones that come have cars.
Okay.
Most of the people that we serve at the center are pretty active, so
Okay.
they come down in the
Still
cars.
drive.
There are a number that will come down on our vehicle,
Okay.
but that's the minority of the folks that
Right.
come on a daily basis. There are other programs that we do to reach out to shut-ins, and we have an outreach worker that works, specifically with folks, that aren't. So the center is really only one component, a big component of what we do, but it's geared really towards trying to keep people healthy, have them have a place to go, keep the mind stimulated, the body sharp, and keep them in their own homes for as long as possible.
What about meals and stuff? Do you guys do meals?
We do on occasion. We don't. We in our cafe we have soup and things like that. We do have. We don't have a regular meal day. Some places do have a regular meal site. There are a few meal sites through the Meals on Wheels program throughout the city, through South Shore Elder Services that we were mentioning before we went on the air. South Shore Elder Services does a lot of great work. So they have a number of meal sites throughout the city. We do have meals, maybe once a month. We'll have the Rotary Club come in every year and sponsor a meal. We may put something on, the Council on Aging itself. We have different groups that come on. Some of the local assisted living places will put on a luncheon for us.
In Sharon, I did want to mention, and again, I think as Tom was saying, I mean, some centers have a daily meal Monday through Friday, and some are starting to have little snack bars and delis and things like that. And actually, right after I retired, we had a meeting in our center in Sharon with over, I think, 100 people who attended from different COAs and elder services like South Shore and HESCO, which is the equivalent South Shore Elder Services in the Sharon area, to talk about meals, to talk about what else should we be offering, what else can we do to make food interesting, etc. But we, in Sharon, we're offering not a daily meal. Since we reopened in a new center, we have a monthly, very large meal with entertainment. Usually it's either with the school or a professional coming in, and a meal. And we used to actually have a short seated yoga session going on before lunch, but that seems to have faded out somewhere. I'm not sure what happened to it. But we also run an Asian program. So once a week we have a very large, in particular, Chinese program that's every week. And they have a meal, I think it's once a month now. Or otherwise they have, tea and coffee and pastries and whatever until they go home. And then we have also a Southeast Asian program. So we have many Indian families in Sharon and thereabouts, and we have a monthly program that includes lunch there too. And we try to include educational information about aging issues during any of these things, if we can, or something fun. Because again, the socialization is as important as anything else, really.
Right.
Definitely.
It's like
Absolutely.
a small club for elders. Now, what is the eligibility age for?
And yes, so that can differ actually.
It does. You know, it's funny. It depends on. We say 60 to join the Kennedy Center. However, we have a Senior Olympic Games every year, which is one of our longest standing programs. It's done in cooperation with the Recreation Department, the Mayor's Office, and the Council on Aging. It's a series of games that take place over a week and a half, similar to the actual Olympics. And the age begins at 55. So I have 4 more years before I can compete. But actually, I won't be able to compete as long as I'm director, I think. But so it begins at 55. It's an outstanding series of events. We actually have Karen Cashman, who was a bronze medal winner in I can't remember which year Olympics it was, but was a Quincy resident. And when the Olympic torch came through the city, she was one of the ones that carried the torch through the city of Quincy and donated that to the Recreation Department. So we use her Olympic torch to light our Olympic torch every year, and the 2 eldest
Members.
eldest male and female competitors will light the torch to begin, to kick off the Olympics. But we have track and field events, we have swimming events, we have bowling and billiards. So there's a wide variety, and they take place in different venues throughout the city. But it's a fun, it's a fun.
Well, it sounds fun, yeah.
And I think what's happening too, Tom's mentioning, so for that program you have people 55 and over. When we reopened our center after it was renovated about 8 years ago, we now call it an adult center, and actually people over the age of 18 can come in.
Wow.
They don't usually, but they can. Although we do have intergenerational programs, and sometimes teens and high school kids and college kids coming in to help tutor and whatever, or exchange knowledge about things. But we do have, because of so many baby boomers and even younger people who might be not working because the economy is the way it is, or they work part-time or whatever. So depending on what the program is, they may be interested, and as long as there's room, we welcome them. And even if they're not from Sharon, so we've had people from Quincy come to Sharon because they have friends there and they heard about it, and they show up. So what we did find was that it sometimes brings in new volunteerism, which is really good. You get younger people coming in, they get really interested, and then they stay and they find something they really love to do there, and so it helps keep things lively. And
both the cities have diverse population. I know
that was
Sharon.
my question next. Yeah, go ahead.
Please go ahead. You can, because I'm very interested to know about this diverse I know Quincy has a really even more diverse population, and Sharon, I understand, has.
We have our LGBT program and our Asian and our Southeast Asian program, and we did have actually a fairly thriving Russian program. Now we still offer kind of English, or we host English lessons for many different groups. But I was going to ask too, because it's such a big city, and I think before you had a center, do you have satellite centers, and how do you
we do
reach out to, especially the non-English speaking?
Yeah. The language can be a huge barrier, and it's unfortunate, and it's a difficult one to overcome. However, we do have satellite programs throughout the city still. One of them is the Wollaston Senior Center, which is primarily Asian. We have a staff member who's Asian who speaks Cantonese and will translate our newsletter. They do some events with us too at the Kennedy Center, but they're there every day, staffed every day. So it's nice because the language isn't, the director there is bilingual. And if there's an issue, we can usually work it out between us. We have a board member, John Chin, long-standing board member, that also helps me with any kind of translation of things like that. But it's interesting, and it certainly is a a challenge. I kind of have a heart for immigrants because my grandparents were Irish immigrants. So I've always was kind of raised on what a great nation this is. You know, it was the immigrants that made it great. That was ingrained in me as a small child. They had a huge advantage though because English was their first language, and they didn't really run into many of the difficulties that others do. So it's been a challenge. It's something that it's an ongoing thing. There's certain things that I think when we focus on what similarities we have, you do better. For instance, we all like a good meal. So we just had our Thanksgiving. Again, a long-standing American tradition is folks come from other countries, they bring in their traditions, but hopefully they also assimilate to some of the uniquely American traditions. And there's a certain language in its own, you know. I happened to go over to a table and there were a group of native-born Americans and a group of Asians and a guy that was born in Italy. And you know, there was just a whole air of festivity and fun, and you know, we all started laughing. Laughter is infectious too, you know, and so those are the kind of things that, you know, working on the things that we have in common, and you know, being respectful. Anybody that comes into the center, I want them, you know, treated with kindness, with dignity and respect. So we still have a lot of work to do, but you know, we're getting
there.
Yeah.
And what did you mention on the LGBTQ as well as women's issues?
As women's issues?
Yes, in the elder services. Did you cater to women, or how? Because we know about the elderly woman violence also.
Yeah. We have, well, I'm a social worker, and I had a social worker, still have a social worker working at the Sharon Adult Center and Council on Aging, and we also work with an organization in that area called HUGS, which is not quite like Dove. It doesn't have shelters, but it does have resources. So we stay in touch with and have worked with and offered help and counseling on usually a short term, sometimes it's a crisis basis, to help a woman or a man. When I first started working there was actually an elderly husband who was supposedly the person being abused. And he was physically the weaker of the couple. So whoever it is, we're going to try to step in, and we would be working along with the police and usually the public health nurse as well, to try to assist. We've helped people, you know, with transportation and to kind of get away. But we work in concert with a lot of other agencies, so we're not, none of us, I don't think, are really set up as really just a mental health agency.
Right.
Some have more than others in terms of social service staff.
Yeah.
But you know, we're lucky to have, you know, one licensed direct worker on.
And as Norma points out, too, you know, even if we don't have the staff on hand, we can be the conduit to an awful lot of, you know, social other services has really great programs. Dove is, you know, here in the city. I was the chairman of the White Ribbon Campaign for many years, and you know, where we would go into the schools and talk to the young guys in particular about, you know, violence, domestic violence, and so there are a lot of agencies. The city's police are terrific. We've got a great working relationship with them and the health department. So there are a lot of opportunities for us to direct people into the right.
I think the other thing that's important is that all the Council on Aging staff and directors are all mandated reporters, and they also have to maintain confidentiality. So even if it's just a senior coming in to have lunch or whatever, that information is supposed to stay within our confines. I mean, if our selectmen had asked us for names of people who were attending something, we'd say no, even if they're our boss. So people can be assured of privacy, confidentiality. If they have an issue and they want to come in. I was going to say I don't know how much time we have right now.
That's fine. We
Sure,
have.
but
Yes, please.
you know, is there a typical process in your center which is handling so many more people? If somebody has a question or an issue, what's the process procedure for
the
them?
first process that our outreach worker would come in and do an evaluation with the person, and then see if there's a particular agency. Now, sometimes I'll be called in on that too, and see what the particular issue is, and we may refer them to South Shore Elder Services. We may get on the phone with the DA's office if it's like a financial exploitation. Joanne Dalabon at DA Morrissey's office does tremendous work in getting refunds when people have been scammed, and she really does terrific, work on that. So sometimes we're the conduit there. So the process would be that they would come in. Usually they go right to the front desk,
Yeah.
but just say they want to see an outreach worker. Sometimes people are concerned, they want that confidential. They may come down and talk to me, personally on it, and we'll get them the help they need.
And you also get referrals from neighbors, family,
a lot of them.
community,
Yeah. Mailmen,
mailmen,
mail
bankers,
carriers, I should say.
people in banks,
Right.
etc. And in our area, we worked with the equivalent to HESCO Elder Services, and they do have protective services workers there. So people would often get referred there as well. Well, they would have to, actually.
What about like when people are like scamming elderly people? Like, I know it's happened to a neighbor of mine where they said, no, you owe this much kind of money and you better, give it to me. And she got really scared. She wanted to take it to the mailbox and put it in there. So it's kind of scary to think that this is happening with the elderly
Yeah, it's
people.
scary and aggravating.
It is.
It's all those things. The Executive Office of Elder Affairs, again, I had mentioned Emma Schmazo, who's really the conduit in that office to the COAs. Often will put out emails, I think, just about every day.
Daily.
But if there is some kind of at least.
Oh, really?
But if there is some kind of a scam, he'll let you know the scam. We'll put that in the newsletter, or sometimes we put a
Yes.
notice up.
Triad, I think, does send
They do.
some out
They
also.
They do, yeah.
So do they send that to all the towns that it's happening because?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And if there's a
Yes.
new scam in particular,
Right.
I haven't heard this one yet, boom. And we'll notify the police. Again, we have a great relationship with all the departments in the city, so department heads meet regularly, so that may be something that will come up.
I think one of the hardest things, though, is that you can get notified about a scam or some
Right.
issue, is that so many seniors are still not using computers.
Right.
Right.
Because this is the perfect way to send out information
Right.
immediately.
Right.
And with a newsletter that comes once a month, in our case, we actually mailed it to every senior.
Right.
Many cases it's dropped around the
Right,
city and
right.
people go find it, and maybe you can get it in the newspaper and all, but someday when everybody gets on a computer,
Right.
they're
World
going to be
will be
getting that
better.
information
Come out,
really
yeah.
quickly.
No, because the older, she was 85 years old and she doesn't go on the computer. She has no idea.
Right.
And she was like, poor thing was scared.
Yeah.
I was really horrified to think that somebody was going to, was asking for money and she wanted to go right there and do it.
Yes,
So
and it happens.
it happens, I
Definitely
guess.
happens.
Yeah. And so she called us up and we said, no, that's a scam. Please
Yeah.
don't do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
You have to kind of hope and repeat in your newsletter
Right.
and in flyers and in everything over and over again.
Yeah. Don't give
Beware, beware, beware.
Right.
And a lot of times they'll use the government as an excuse. I'm calling from the IRS. Give me your personal information. Well, the government doesn't do that.
Right.
So, but again, trying to educate, make sure
Right.
that people know that, because these are people that play by the rules, and when
I
somebody
know.
else doesn't, they.
So in all your years, what is it something you would like to share with the viewers? What's your experience, or what do you like, or what do you want to see it go to? Where do you want it?
Oh boy, there's so many things over the years. The people that I've met, the people that I work with, the thing I love best is you find yourself in a position where you can help people. And that's very, very rewarding. And sometimes you don't even have to do very much, and they're so appreciative, you know. They don't know where to turn. So those are the things I love best. In terms of where we're going, at the center, the mayor has plans to develop the back end of the center, where we want to do a fitness path in there, and a healing garden, and so we have big plans for the future, you know.
Fabulous.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
This is sort of happening all around the state, and probably all around all the states, is how are we and how is Quincy looking at preparing for an aging population? Are there committees set up? Are there, what's going on?
We do. We began an outreach a couple years back with boomers, and it's kind of interesting. What we found was that some of them drop mom or dad off at the center, and they would love to come in, but they don't want to come in while they're there. So what we've done is we've had a few things at night specifically geared for the boomers, and we also consciously, when we got the center, we named it the Kennedy Center, not the Kennedy Senior Center, or not the Quincy Senior, you know. We named it the Kennedy Center, and we refer to it as the Kennedy Center. We are the Council on Aging. Aging's not a bad thing. That's all of our goals. But we refer to the center as the center, you know. So that's a conscious decision. And then, you know, really that reaching out and having those things at night, the hope is that they'll come into the center, they'll enjoy the center, and then they'll assimilate. And as they go through the aging process, that'll continue.
Sure. And Norma, what's your experience in 25 years? And where do you want to see? Do you want to keep serving the community?
Well, I've kind of switched communities on some level, but I'm always kind of thinking beyond one community. I think you can't just throw away all that experience and knowledge that you've gained, you know, that brain drain that happens when all of us retire at a certain point. So I'm continuing to bother my staff and Mass Councils on Aging. I stay in touch with people. Now that I actually have more time to be reading and researching things, I'm sending information. Is this of interest to you? Is that of interest to you? And people know that they can call on me for whatever. I was co-chairing a committee on property tax relief for seniors for quite a few years, and I've actually talked to people into taking over. They didn't realize they were going to take over. They thought they were assisting me, but the next week I said, well, I'm really retiring. But, you know, I took all of my information home with me and on a flash drive. So I said, anything you can't find, give me a call. And I don't know yet where I'm going with all this. Being here, actually, and
Being in
doing
Quincy.
this, being in Quincy, but being
Yes.
here right now today.
Yes.
And another show that we did is, are just things that I guess the 25 years of
Experience.
beyond that experience can maybe be useful in sharing in another way with this
with helping
community.
out
Yeah.
the community, which is really thankful for that. Now. That's
Definitely.
really,
Quincy is a big city and there's huge resources. And
you could be writing a
could do,
book on that.
maybe do something for the elderly woman, because there's a huge woman population. Don't you think so? Do
Oh,
you have a huge
absolutely.
human
Yeah.
population?
Yeah.
I definitely
What is the
survive
ratio?
longer.
Yes, what's the ratio like?
You know, I should know this, and I
Yes.
did know it at one point.
But when you see the center, do you
Yes.
see?
No
No,
question.
no.
Yeah, it's,
No
Okay.
question, yeah.
it's just
fairly-
3 to 1
it's-
probably.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
3
it's
to
fairly
1.
substantial,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
That's so nice. So it was a pleasure having you, Mr. Tom.
Well, it was a
Glasby.
pleasure being here.
Thank you very much. It was really
Bunch.
nice.
And thank you, Norma, for
You're
joining us
welcome.
once again.
You're welcome.
You're
I'm
also
glad I
very
could.
valuable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on board.
Yes.
Thank you for the show.